The story that my mom tells me is that she knew by the time she was 8 years old that she would be a nurse. Because I asked her as I got older, I says, Mom, how did you know what you wanted to do? She said, I always knew. And then she told me the story about when she was about 8 years old, she had decided that she was going to be a nurse.
Did she ever tell you where she got that idea from?
Added to that story, there was a family friend who stopped by the house and brought a doctor's medicine bag. You know, the bag that doctors would carry, you know, from how they did house calls in those days. And so this family friend dropped it off to the house, and she said it was one of her favorite things to play with. So I don't know. I think that may have had something to do with her wanting to be a nurse, but as I think I mentioned, back in those days, a woman in terms of what she would do someday was really limited to three occupations. Either you're going to be a teacher, you're going to be a nurse, you're going to be a homemaker, or secretary. Yes. So my mother chose one of the three early on and said, I'm going to be a nurse.
And so that determination that she had, how did that play into when she went for schooling?
Of course, the easiest option was, where do I go to school close to where I live? And so she did apply to the Kingston Hospital at the time, had a nursing program. And she was denied entry to that program, as well as her close friend. Both of them were denied entry.
What year was that?
52 or thereabouts. So then I don't know if it was a guidance counselor or someone suggested, why don't you apply to Albany Med? And they said it's a very good school. My mother, again, undeterred, she worked very hard in school. She would, by her own words, would say that I wasn't particularly smart. I worked really hard for all my grades, unlike my sister Lillian, who was smart and very rarely picked up a book. So she applied, and they accepted her. And off she went. She didn't have a license. She didn't have a car. She didn't figure out how it was going to get paid for. Her mother and grandmother somehow made it all happen. She didn't worry about it. She didn't think about it. And she said she had a great experience there. She didn't worry about how something was going to happen, just that it was going to happen. And that it was just going to work. My father at the time, I believe he was in Philadelphia going to school. She was in love with him, but it's like, I'm going to be a nurse. You do what you need to do. And I'll go to school, and this will somehow work someday. My father, fortunately, did have a car, and he would go up and visit her, and he'd pick her up and bring her back into Kingston. But they made it work. You would think after having been turned down by the program in Kingston, most people might be deterred from applying again to go to work. But Kingston Hospital was the only game in town. Benedictine Hospital hadn't been built yet. So she applied, and they accepted her. So she still kept the vision, kept the dream alive, and applied, and she was accepted. Of course, she didn't know that she was going to be the only African-American nurse when she arrived, but surprise. So one of the biggest questions that I've been asked about my mother over the years, after someone having met her or spent a little bit of time with her, is that they would ask me, is she always like this? Which made me scratch my head. I mean, is she always sweet and that pleasant disposition? And my response to that was yes, 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 absolutely, for as long as I can remember.